watching the Screaming Fish here, people, and once again I'm here for yet another video for you guys, and this time we are going to be taking a look at the Warner Bros. Animation film Justice League Dark, a film that has been hyped by many DC fans like me, and stars Matt Ryan returning to play Constantine once again, which I was really hyped to see, as well as I cannot remember who else. I'm probably gonna have to read the script. But anywho, so yeah, I was really looking forward to Justice League Dark, and because Constantine, Zatanna, Deadman, Swamp Thing are some of my favorite DC characters of all time, and I was really looking forward to seeing them in an animated feature. Like, give me any kind of movie related to any of those characters, I would go see. Like Constantine movie, Swamp Thing movie, anything, I would go see that because I love those characters. Dang it, I really need to watch that Swamp Thing movie from the 80s. Or was it from the 90s? I'm gonna have to look this up. Anywho, let's get right into the review, and I'll share my thoughts on Justice League Dark. Now, before I actually get into the review, I would really like to point out that I do not hate animated movies. There are quite a few that I really like. For example, The Lion King, Finding Nemo, and Finding Dory, as well as Moana, which are all amazing movies. I also like quite a few of Warner Bros. Animation movies, like Batman Mask of Phantasm, Batman Under the Red Hood, Flashpoint, and of course, the Lego Movie. Now, I do understand that a lot of people do like this movie, so I can understand how what I'm about to say is going to seriously annoy people. But after watching Justice League Dark, I was incredibly underwhelmed. Justice League Dark, for me, was a very disappointing experience. I'm just going to say here and now that I thought Justice League Dark was pretty crap. It is unbelievably boring, with a cast of iconic characters that are turned into bland and forgettable exposition machines that is advertised by trailers that were clearly advertising a different movie altogether. So now that you have heard my short summary of what I actually think of this movie, let's actually get on with the actual review. This movie has quite the cast of characters at its disposal, and these characters were very hit or miss for me. Matt Ryan, who also played Constantine in the far better TV show Constantine, gives a very memorable performance as John Constantine himself, and does have some pretty awesome lines of dialogue. I would really say that he is the saving grace of this movie. Camilla Luddington, I apologize if I pronounced that wrong, as Zatanna, on the other hand, I found to be a really dull presence in this movie. The character never really does anything in this movie to make me care or like this character, and the incredibly bland performance from the actress herself really doesn't help here at all. Nicholas Turturro, again, I apologize if I pronounced that wrong, did give a pretty darn charismatic performance, and I love the way this character was introduced, but for the majority of this movie he is basically comic relief and nothing more, and I never really found him to be as compelling as he is in the comics, which really disappointed me. Ray Chase as Jason Blood, aka Etrigan, is really the closest we actually get to a compelling character next to Constantine. The voice performance was really good, and to be fair, he did have some pretty cool moments in the movie. But therein lies the problem. When I was going to see Suicide Squad for the first time, I was worried about how they were going to introduce the characters and their backstories, and the overall chemistry of the characters and how they would play off each other. But for a movie that packed up to 10 characters, it balanced most of those characters far better than I thought it would, with great character interactions and chemistries. And it didn't really have any movies that came before it to set up or develop these characters, and it actually paid off for the most part. Unfortunately, Justice League Dark is the movie I was afraid Suicide Squad would be. There is almost no chemistry present between any of the characters. They do not play off each other well. Every time a new character was introduced, they would just automatically, without a second thought, just do what the other characters in the scene are asking them to do, and it really does betray who these characters are and doesn't really make sense. The way the backstories for these characters are told throughout the movie is incredibly rushed. Almost all the backstories in this movie are told through flashbacks, and that they just feel really disjointed and just rushed, with a voiceover basically explaining to the viewer what is happening in the flashback, despite the fact that we can clearly see what is actually going on. It's like the writers just said, we can't focus up too much on the backstories here, guys, we need to get the magical side of things, okay? So just make the flashbacks at least 2 seconds long with the voiceover to explain what actually happens, okay? Okay. And that is exactly what this movie does. Now, as far as introducing magic into this universe went, it went pretty badly, I do have to say. All the spells and general magic that is used in this movie just feels really been there, done that. There isn't a huge variety of it, as a lot of it comes off as the same premise as the last spell that was cast in a movie. And visually, it's not that compelling either. They're just colourful shapes that people shoot out of their hands and cause loads of damage. So now let's talk about a character called Swamp Thing, who I was really excited to see in this movie because he's one of my favourite DC characters of all time. Here's the problem though. He is in this movie for exactly 2 scenes, so in effect that's like 4 minutes, which really annoyed me, and I was really dying to see Swamp Thing kick butt for quite a bit of the film, but you only get like 2 minutes of it. So in other words, I am fair warning you here, do not get excited for Swamp Thing in this movie because he is barely in this movie. The trailers like advertised him as like for this huge scene, that's what the trailers made it out to be. They were like setting him up for this huge scene. And yeah, he does have a pretty cool scene in a movie, but he's just barely in this movie. He's only in it for that one scene and one action sequence, and that action sequence itself isn't very good. And the villain, I'm just going to say right now, is a walking punch machine and horribly voice acted. I'm not going to tell you who it actually is though, because I don't want to spoil the movie for you. And as much as it actually pains me to say it, but the worst part of this movie story-wise was actually Batman of all people. As soon as the film hit the 40-minute mark, it became incredibly clear that this film is a casualty of a studio hitting the panic button and throwing their most well-known character in there for no other reason than to advertise the movie. The only reason that Batman is even in this movie is because he's just there to advertise it. It even creates a fatal flaw character-wise because Batman in almost every scene is pretty much overshadowing everyone in this movie, except for maybe Constantine. And he really doesn't do anything that is integral to the plot of the movie. He just hangs about in the sidelines and delivers a cool line and then takes part in a huge action sequence. And as far as the animation of the film goes, sometimes it looks visually good looking, and then it just looks terrible. There's this one shot of a character flying in the movie, and it looked like I was watching a very poorly made stop motion video, and unfortunately that is what most of the action sequences in this movie feel like. Poorly animated set pieces that never come off as awesome or memorable as they really should. It's just very conventional with nothing special about it. The movie also attempts to add a bit of horror to the mix, which I will admit is cool to see, but the tension is just never there whenever the film tries to be a horror movie, and it really does come off as a 4-year-old child trying to scare away an angry cat. And believe me, I know from experience, trying to scare away an angry cat does not work. It ends pretty badly. If you really like this movie, then fantastic. I'm glad that you can enjoy something that I honestly can't. I do get that a lot of people like this movie, and in some cases I can see why. Matt Ryan is great as Constantine, and it's just generally great to see him playing the character once again. But that is not enough to save the film from subpar animation, boring action sequences, forgettable characters that are overshadowed by an iconic character that has no place in the movie whatsoever. But despite all the negatives I've given this movie already, I can say that it does have a couple of strong points. For example, there's a scene where a couple of characters go inside someone's mind, which was not only decently cool and interesting, but it was one of the few scenes where I thought the animation was absolutely fantastic. However, the best scene in this movie for me personally was the scene where John Constantine and Etrigan are in a casino gambling with a bunch of demons. That scene was superbly voice acted and really brought out the absolute best of the characters. But my biggest complaint here is that Justice League Dark is so boring. The action is about as fun as cutting grass with nail clippers, none of the characters do anything interesting or compelling, and the plot is about as compelling as eating a rotten apple filled with dead worms. And when I said the trailers were advertising a different movie altogether, I wasn't kidding. When I watch the trailers now, it made it out to be about the Justice League with Batman as a key character. But the movie itself has Batman overshadowing most of the characters, except for maybe Constantine, in effect making the movie's supposed main characters generic side characters, basically. The Justice League themselves even feature in the finale of this movie, which really annoyed me because that just told me that the studio had no faith whatsoever in any of these characters, so they just decided to chuck the best and most well-known characters, e.g. Batman, so people would actually see it. So, Justice League Dark for me was very disappointing. I really can't believe I'm actually saying that, because I love these characters from the comics and TV appearances they've made. Heck, I would go see a Constantine or Swamp Thing movie any day, but the movie does not do any of them justice performance-wise or characterization-wise. Again, if you like this movie, great, but I hated this movie, and I'm really sad to say this, but Justice League Dark is a pretty awful movie. I'm sorry, but I did not like this movie at all. So, guys, those were my thoughts on Justice League Dark. I do hope you enjoyed the video. Personally, I thought Justice League Dark was very disappointing, and I'm gonna be honest, it was a pretty awful experience. But have you seen it? What did you think of it? Do you disagree with me, or do you agree? Most likely scenarios that I'm gonna have at least 10 people saying they hate me for hating this movie. But, oh well, that's my opinion, so, I don't care. Anywho, please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and follow me on Facebook and Instagram. And I will, indeed, see you in the next video, guys. So, bye.